Okay, we are doing Uptown entrances northeast on today's LX Views. We're starting at Elizabeth Ave / Trade Street and Kings, so just outside of the Little Sugar Creek, east of it. You can see the light rail, the gold line, which runs down this street. I think it's a relatively new addition within the last 10 years. And this street, Elizabeth, we're about to pass over the Sugar Creek. I'm not sure if it's culverted here or not. I'll look for a bridge. But then immediately after, it looks like it's covered. But immediately after crossing over, we start climbing up out of the gully, the valley. And we're underneath the inner beltway. It's amazing. You'll probably hear this a lot on these videos. Just the scale of that highway, and it encircles the city. It's stunning. So here we are. We're in this transitional zone between, or sort of the old boundary, the creek, and then the railroad, and then the new boundary, which is the interstate. And we can see there's some walls, stonework, vestiges of residential. And then we see parking garages and the brutal 1970s modern city. I think what we're seeing there is the jail. That's the Mecklenburg County Jail. But yeah, so we're going up Trade Street. It's definitely Trade Street by this point. And you can see there are empty lots. Apparently there was a street grid here that had been lost. You can still sometimes see we'll probably see a small street that doesn't seem to connect to anything. It was blocked when they installed the jail. They just said, no one's going to use the street anymore. Probably because it would cause traffic. If not on Trade Street, on the streets on 6th Street and 4th Street, which connect to that inner beltway that we crossed under. So they removed it from the grid. Here we can see sort of old 1930s architecture. I've seen pictures of Charlotte in history books, and we see the old City Hall too coming up on the left, and with the obelisk in front of it. I think that's the old City Hall, and might be the old courthouse. I think the DA's office is in the old courthouse, and that was the old City Hall. I could have them vice versa, and then coming up on the right, I think, is the new police station. But this is a civic center, right? So there were signs of life even before they installed the inner beltway and cleared out all of the housing that was there previously. There was the City Hall, the Civic Center. Trade Street has always been a major street within Charlotte, and as you got closer to Uptown, within the old railroad, I've seen pictures where there are homes and businesses and stuff standing on Trade Street. On the left-hand side, you can see the Federal Reserve Building, and then a giant parking lot, then a 1940-style communication building. I'm not sure if it has windows or not. We'll probably see it on the next street. But yeah, we're getting closer and closer to Uptown, and the buildings are becoming clearer. And you can really see that the heart of the development really is within the area bounded by those old 19th century railroad tracks. And maybe, I know there was development. So you're looking on the left now, you can see sort of small low rises. That's what was on Trade Street. I think pretty much all the way to the creek. A lot of it was cleared out. I don't know if it was brick or it was wood, and it doesn't matter. But it was removed ultimately to make way for a city where traffic could just fly through at 35, 40 miles an hour. But bear in mind, I mean, at the time, it almost seemed probably impossibly far for cars to get to. And Charlotte was a different place. It was like a shipping center. There was a lot of like trucking happening at the time. It wasn't the 21st century city that it is today. So when they built it to be efficient for the needs of the time. Here's a really good example of that. So this is the entrance from the Independence Expressway. The Independence Expressway didn't used to connect to the Interbeltway because there was no Interbeltway. But we'll look at the interchange. I think it's one of the next ones to look at. It's really impressive, actually. But so this is just like this whole thing that we're going to ride along. This bike lane that we're in, that wasn't even there 10 years ago when we were first in Charlotte. This was 3 lanes. I mean, you could conceivably do 50. I think I did 50 down this street at one point. So things have improved dramatically, but like you can see it used to be a residential neighborhood. If you look at those trees right there, the way that they're planted with like the median, and then on the right-hand side coming up, there used to be a shotgun shack where those shipping containers are now. There used to be a shotgun shack for mill housing workers. It was on Bland Street. That when they started to develop South End, they moved to that. And I would visit it from time to time just to appreciate and try to like get in touch with the history. But all right, so looking on the left, you can see another disconnected street grid with a small retaining wall. And let's see if we can see some stairs that lead up to like where a yard might have been. That is like the holy grail for what do you call it? Like lost city urban archaeologists. And it's a lot of like the Charlotte then and now books, but it's not just limited to Charlotte, every city. But you can see it like with those big tall willow oaks. There was something was there. There was housing there, but now we're in a more modern part. But yeah, so this street, like before they put in the bike lane, I had this Mustang. I used to drive it sometimes. I'd come off Independence, and I wouldn't feel like taking the Beltway for whatever reason. I don't know why, honestly. Like, once they finish the Beltway, there's no reason to take the street anymore. And I think that's why they converted it to 2 lanes. I still think maybe even 2 lanes might be too much. When there's special occasions, so if you look to the right, on the other side of that parking lot, there's a big open space, and that's where they have Charlotte's big music festival, the Loving Life Festival. And Dave Matthews is playing this year. I've never seen Dave Matthews. There's a live. There's a part of, like, my childhood that wants to see. So I don't know if I'm going to go. That's neither here nor there. Well, it's here. It is here. It's coming, but it's not right now. But the upshot of it is like, so that's kind of like what happens over on that side. But we're coming up over the tracks. There's the 7th Street Market is on the right-hand side. So we're in the city now. We're coming to a large corporate plaza. And you can just see that the development style just flips, right? Like it instantly becomes both like much older, pre-war even, but then also much newer, like post 1980. So it's interesting to see to me. But yeah, I mean, there's just block after block after block on 6th Street that they'd slow it down, and at least you can ride a bike down it now. But all right, so here's what I was talking about. So now we're doing the entrance past the Independence Expressway, and this interchange here. These interchanges, I mean, I go slowly past them. It's amazing. I mean, this stuff that the ambition that we had to build these giant, sweeping, 3-story, 3-layer bridges so that cars could get from like 15 miles east of the city, this place called like, I don't know, Union County, I don't know, whatever, Eastern Mecklenburg County to Uptown like 2 minutes faster. The effort is amazing that we as a people were able to like do this. Look at that. Like, this bridge is huge that we're on. Someone had to dig they had to dig a ravine to put the highway through, and then they had to build a bunch of ramps for the highway to go over the other highway. And we're kind of going around it right now. So on the left-hand side is that King's. It's central. It connects to another neighborhood called Plaza. So there's a decent bit of traffic. I used to take the bus down this route, and it was very convenient. It took me 5 minutes. It was so easy. But anyway, so now we're turning. This is the actual like on-grid approach on 7th Street. And here we are. We're seeing that interchange again. It's gigantic, right? Like, look at how tall it stands. First off, we're about to go over what looks to be like a giant chasm that cars just fly through. It's a little loud, but it's still impressive, right? At the same time, I mean, it's huge. It's such a. I think when they put this in, or there you can see the little Sugar Creek there too, which is kind of cool to see from the height. When they put it in this part of town, they probably thought like, there's no way development will ever get this far, and even if it does, Little Sugar Creek floods. So let's just build over it, and that's kind of what they did, and they built it to interstate standards, which dictated that like I think that like you have to be able to take a curve at 50 miles an hour, which means they have to be gentle and sweeping, and they built that amazing interchange. It's huge, and it's not the only one outside of Uptown Charlotte. There's another one we'll encounter in another video, and there's a third which we won't encounter because it's just outside of like the limits that I'd set. But the highway interchanges are just, they're impressive. I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily like constructive in that like they make you want to experience the city in any other way except in a car, which can be frustrating because by definition you're going to be stuck in traffic. But like, it's still impressive to be able to like see. We as a people made this stuff, which would have been impossible 4 or 5 generations ago. So, I mean, there's that, which is cool. But here we're climbing the hill up in Uptown. All these condos on the right-hand side are new. You don't really see, there's not, for the amount of residential that's over here, I don't know where folks go out. There's one like restaurant bar that I've ever seen people like hanging out in. Maybe they just walk up the hill to Uptown. I don't know. I don't know what's on the left-hand side of the street. It's definitely low rise, but we're coming through like the old First Ward. So when they cleared First Ward's kind of like a good story, but it's a bad story at the same time. I don't know what kind of story it is, except I know that there was likely substandard housing there, like uninsulated, possibly unelectrified, and it was razed to the ground, and it was replaced with this housing. I don't know if it was marketed so that the folks could buy in and have developed generational wealth or not. But if they did, then it's a great story. If it's a rental community, maybe it's less of an impressive story. Here's an interesting sign. It's like one of those old 1940s Art Deco signs, 1930s even. And then there's a lot of, what do you call it? Parking spots, parking spaces. So this is where that Loving Life Festival actually happens. And then here's First Ward Park. First Ward Park, I've seen. It's dealing with some issues right now. I'll just leave it at that. But there's a cool granite block field the kids like to climb on there, and then there's workout equipment that I have used in the past. The pull-up bar has been removed twice. There's recidivist pull-up bar stealers that haunt the park at this point in time, so I can't do pull-ups there. So I don't do pull-ups there anymore. But sometimes if we're at the library, the kids will still want to go across the street to play on the blocks. And there's a good splash pad in the summer. So, but yeah, it was nicer 5 years ago. And then on the right here is an old historic church. It doesn't really fit the city that it's in, right? Like clearly it's a residential church, but it's in like this big commercial city with these giant like 60-story towers right next to it. It's very Charlotte. It's very Uptown. All right, here's the last entrance from the eastern approach. We're coming, so we're at the bottom of a hill now. If you take a right, that's the trail that brings you up to Noda. We're coming underneath 2 sets of interstate, really 4-lane interstate, gigantic. That's where the split off to get onto the Independence Expressway starts. We're going to cross over the access road. So for the rest of the video, this access road is going to kind of define the edge of Charlotte. just because. So on the north side and the south side, they actually built the expressway. They built it earlier than when they did on the west side and on the east side. So they're actually inside of the old rail lines instead of on the outside of them. And the access road, which is it's a very formidable barrier to pedestrian access. It's going to define the next set of streets. But here we are in that first word I was talking about. So it's a cool redevelopment project. Like the housing stock looks nice. We're climbing up a big bluff right now. This is a steep hill. And so I'd actually never, that I could recall, ridden a bike down this path here in the big median. It was a really enjoyable experience. The only thing that I think could be improved is for the city to, at the street crossovers where there are roundabouts, I think to slow down the traffic, if they could somehow like put in a trail so that bikes didn't have to go through, or pedestrians could go over the roundabout instead of around it, it would make for a more seamless experience. And make it feel like a greenway is what it would make it feel like. It would be like, oh, all of a sudden we've recaptured this greenway. But I mean, it's a grand experience to walk down a median like this. I feel like it's public, right? Which is cool. I like that aspect to it. But like, but you kind of feel like royalty almost, where you have this because no one's there. It feels very like our nobility, right? So you see, like I'll watch like television on PBS, Masterpiece Theater, or whatever, and every once in a while they'll be like in England, and there'll be these like nobility or Europe or wherever walking on their grounds, so to speak, right? And like I feel like in this one I was cycling on the grounds, and it was truly delightful. The only thing, again, that could have enhanced it for me would be to, instead of having to turn onto a sidewalk and do this, like, turning thing, just to continue right across the street. But I don't know. Maybe that would change the experience or alter it somehow. I don't really know. But yeah, that's the first word. That's that park, right, where they have the festival. It's not really a park. It's just a big open spot. I think, like, if they had the chance, they would redevelop it. And then here you can see some, like, mid-20th century, maybe first half 20th century, like warehouse space. There's this UNC Charlotte building. I don't know what's going on with it. This part of town. So there's a, and again, more early 20th century, maybe even late 19th century space by the railroad. From what I understand, there used to be a lot of like factories over here, like cotton factories where they'd manufacture. So after electricity came to town, in like the early 20th century, Charlotte became a textile production hub. It captured a lot of the textile work that was I guess in New England, or maybe England itself, old England, and that's what they did for a while. But this part of town, there's the Charlotte like unhoused mission is around here, and people loiter. They don't really hurt anybody. Do I want to steer to the story? All right, I'll share it because who knows? Maybe we'll be watching this in the future. So one time, it was like April. All right, so here we're coming in from Davidson Street. On the left-hand side, I'm not sure what we saw. Davidson Street's an old street. I love this street because it is. It just feels historic to me. And then somewhere over here is like is a Rose Garden wine bar that my spouse took me to last December. We had a great night. We drank wine outside. It was a temperate December night. We had jackets on. I'm not sure if we were outside warmer tonight. I think we may have been outside of a warmer. We walked over from Uptown. It was pleasant. But we made the mistake of going down Brevard Street instead of Davidson Street. So it felt a little... You'll see it's a little more hostile, just because there's like a bus depot there. Anyway, so we crossed over some railroad tracks. Probably noticed that, and now we're crossing over the expressway here, and coming up on the access road. And that pretty much defines the entrance from Davidson Street. A little bit lower down Davidson Street, it's a big hill. It's a formidable hill to climb, actually. You might be able to see it from Caldwell Street. It's the same hill. It sits low, and at the bottom of it is a branch that feeds into Sugar Creek. It's called they built a park over it. It's the Alexander Street Park. But here we are. So this street, I guess it's Caldwell Street. It goes over those tracks that we rode over on Davidson Street. So those tracks, it's I guess the old Sea Breeze line. I think they're connected with the CSX Railroad. So there's some railroad trivia for you. I don't really know what that means. But so you can see on the other side of the street, there's that bus depot with that like sort of imposing looking gate. So that's what we walked past. And that lighting, you can't even see the light because it's daytime. But at night, the lighting was harsh. It was that harsh blue like LED. So that was our approach to, what do you call it, roses. I feel like, if Charlotte just put some signs in being like, this is, if you're a pedestrian and you want to have a nice walk, go 1 block further. Could do a lot for getting people to walk. Assuming they've made it this far over from Uptown, which is, is a bit of a walk. It's a bit of a walk. I mean, it's a sizable distance. We're 4 or 5 blocks over, I think, from like the main core, and north at this point, pretty substantially as well, of where a lot of the folks that would be out walking would walk. But crossed over 277. Here's that arterial road. The sheriff's office, I think, is on the other side of the street. There's Brevard. I think Brevard was like a major street. So behind us, you can't see it, is this new development called Optimist Hall. It was an old cod manufacturing mill. This guy Johnston, I think, was somehow involved with. He was like he has a history in Charlotte. Anyway, so we climbed the hill. We crossed over those tracks at street level, and now we're going through this street that they put apartments on. The interesting thing here is you can see it's a grid, right? Like we're on a grid, which is what Charlotte is. It's a city of avenues built on a grid. That's what they had in mind when they laid it out, when the railroads came. But we got to get across the access road. So during COVID, that spot that we're kind of looking at now on the hill, that was where the unhoused set up their tent camp, and they were there for a while. And it was interesting because for the first time that I could remember, there were fewer people out on the street, like street people, like just sort of wandering on Tryon Street than there had been. But I mean, it was people at some point, like it just ended, right? They cleared the camp out. They just did. Now we have people. The thing is, they never really like left the area. They just kind of dispersed. And like, if you know where to look, you can still see the tents. But it's not all concentrated like it used to be. So you can see. So we're going under 277 on the rail trail. This might be my favorite entrance into Charlotte. I don't know. It's certainly my top 5. If I do a top 5 entrances into Uptown, this makes it. Look at that artwork. I watched them painting that. I actually filmed it on a different video. So I tried to film this several times. It just didn't. I didn't have the right settings on the camera. Even now, so this camera, I filmed it in 2K, but then it got condensed in my editor into 1, and I don't know, compressed. I don't know if it really did justice to like the fidelity like of the image capture. I'm hoping if this does survive into the future, the algorithms will be good enough that it won't be an issue. I suspect they will. But anyway, so we're just kind of looking around, trying to take in. And I'm on a bike, right? I'm just looking around though. This is trying to like simulate the experience that someone would have walking down this pathway. And that unfinished garage is kind of neat, like in a post-industrial, like run out of money So it reminds me of like in the 90s, coming into Boston, into Dorchester on Granite Ave. There was that like real estate development that sat when they ran out of money in 89, and just sat unfinished until the mid 90s. That's what that parking garage reminds me of. But you can see here, like, that whole district. So there's a great park. There's that empty space that, like, could be developed. And if that happens, that parking garage gets finished lickety split as far as I'm concerned. So North College Street. So what's behind us we don't see is the old there's an old train station I stumbled into. I don't go there. I didn't go there because apparently it's like, again, it's part of the mission. But College Street's a major street. I'd love to see College Street. We'll get into this when I do the proper Uptown video. Be made two-way, because it's shocking to me that we only have one two-way street in our urban core. But I'd love to see College Street made two-way, but it just kind of dead ends. And I get the railroad tracks. It goes in front of an old railroad station, which is now soup kitchen and art space for homeless people, and it goes all the way down. But that's the main entrance. So we didn't cross over the railway, and then and we just got to the artery. And then here's the actual off ramp. So you're coming down off the wall, and those are the northeast entrances.